Welcome to a Telltale Books video. I'm Greg, and I'm going to be covering a story by Rudy, Rucker, and Marc Laidlaw titled Probability Pipeline. This is the first in a series about the characters Delbert and Zeb. And in Rucker's bibliography, it's his 40th published work. In Laidlaw's bibliography, his 21st published work. So in neither case were these writers just starting out. Now, I've been reading Rudy Rucker's stories. I can't say that I've read a huge amount of his work, but I have read a number of his works, starting with stories that he published in the magazines back in the early 1980s. And was always impressed by him. So I did make the decision that I wanted to do a deep dive reading everything I can get my hands on by Rudy Rucker in order of publication. And true to my spirit, I'm starting it out with number 40. I will go back and start with number 1 and proceed through, but I went to this one because of the project where I was trying to get to the May-June 2025 issue of Asimov's, but there were a couple stories in there where I felt I needed to go back and read earlier stories because the stories were part of a series. And I decided, well, I'm not just going to read the one story in an older issue and skip all the rest of the stories. I want to read the whole issue. But in doing that, I run into more stories that were part of series that took me further back. And so then reading those whole issues, I run into more stories that took me further back. And that's what brought me to Probability of Pipeline, which was published in February of 1988 in an original anthology that was published only in paperback. I opted for getting it in this nice hardcover book, Transreal, a collection of Rucker's works, which is an awesome book. So that's where I read it. I don't have the anthology where this story originally appeared. So I kept doing that. I kept thinking I want to read the whole series, but I want to go back to the issue where the stories appeared and read those whole issues. And then I was running into other series, and I sat down a few days ago and started charting the whole string of exactly where I would end up if I stick to my guns and read the whole issue of all these back issues that have stories that are related to stories that are related to stories that are related to the stories that are in the May-June 2023 issue. And when I ended up in 1957 with the first story of a Poul Anderson series, I thought, this is probably going to land me all the way back in the 1930s before I'm done. And so then I'd be jumping around the history of science fiction magazines all over the place and all out of order. And I've already got a project to read through the magazines starting in 1926 with the first issue, or 1923 rather, with the first issue of Weird Tales, and moving through all the years in order like that. And if I do that, I'll catch all these same series. I'll cover them all. So I've made the decision to kill that project of trying to follow that path up to that issue of Asimov's. So the May-June 2025 issue of Asimov's is put off to the side for now. I'll get to it eventually, but not right now. Instead, I want to concentrate on Weird Tales in 1923. I've been kind of stalled there while I read everything by Francis Stevens. I will be getting back on track in a couple of months, reading, I think like 3 months from now, I'll finally be back to reading issues of Weird Tales. And when I get to 1926, amazing stories. 1930, astounding science fiction. You see how that goes. And I'm going to go through the history of the magazines from there and try to read as much as I humanly possible can read. It's going to be difficult. So I've scrapped that, but I decided I wanted to stick with the Delbert and Zeb series. And there's a couple other series I still do want to stay with. The Coyote series by Alan Steele and the Diving Universe series by Kristen Catherine Rush. I'm going to continue to read those series in their entirety and track down issues. I'm not going to read the whole issues that stories appear in. I'm just going to read those stories, and I'll buy the books that are about them. I already have Coyote, and I have the first story that Coyote is assembled from in again, an original anthology that was published. It's just a paperback, but it's the only way I can get a hold of that original first story of the Coyote series. So I'm going to be reading those. I'm going to be going through those, doing videos of them. But otherwise, that whole Asimov's project, reading through all those different series, that's been scrapped. It's just not realistic for me to do with all the other things that I am doing and that I want to do. But Delbert and Zeb, I'm going to go through and read that entire series. And as I said, that first story, it was not first published in Transreal, but it was collected into this book. So it's in here, and this is an awesome book. This is a collectible book. It's beautiful. It's got a lot of great early works by Rudy Rucker, including Probability Pipeline. So what is Probability Pipeline? Brief partial synopsis. Delbert and Zeb are the two main characters. They're university students and they're surfers. And apparently Zeb is a math genius. Zeb is discussing the dimensions of surf space. And while he's doing this, this gang of searchers led by Lex Loach, and the gang calls themselves Stoke Pilgrims, they walk by, and these guys are bullies. Delbert picks a fight, but then Delbert says, wait a minute, instead of us fist fighting, let's do a duel. Who can surf the best? And so they arrange a time and place, and they meet at that place. And Zeb shows up with this transparent surfboard. Now, Delbert gave him $200 because Zeb didn't have a surfboard at the moment. Gave him $200 to go out and buy a decent surfboard. And he comes back with this invisible thing, and Zeb says, yeah, but I didn't pay anything for it. And so then what'd you do with the $200? So first, when Lex Loach and gang walks up, Zeb tries to get Loach to use his new board. Because what this new board does is it plugs into you, into your nervous system, so that your brain can control surf space. What this does is it gives you the ability to control the waves and create a monster wave to totally swamp Loach, which after Loach refuses to get on the board, Zeb takes it out and does exactly that. I'm not going to continue the synopsis beyond that. You kind of get a feel for this. This is a great, great story. It plays on... It's hard for me to pick out what Marc Laidlaw did with this to contribute to this story, because from what I remember of Rudy Rucker's style, this is very much a Rudy Rucker story. The the crazy math ideas, the slang terminology he uses, the kind of cyberspace stories, the humor he puts into it, the Alice in Wonderland feel to his stories, all of that is here. All of the best of what I love about Rudy Rucker's work can be found in this story. The story is mostly a comedy. It doesn't take itself seriously, and it is funny. It is funny. It's hilarious. It's wacky. It's crazy. It's weird. It's wild. And that is typical of a Rudy Rucker story. So I'm glad I started with this one, because I think this is a really good introductory story to what Rudy Rucker does in his fiction. If you've never read him, go to this one first. It's a really good first story, really good first intro into Rudy Rucker's crazy universe of fiction. Sometimes Rucker's lingo can get a little difficult because he is a mathematician. And so, but he doesn't, he relies upon his knowledge of real math, but he creates these science fictional things. A lot of what he's talking about, like surf space, is just something he completely invents for the story. There is no such thing as surf space, but it's a really cool thing that leads to this complicated mathematical discussion, which is a little hard to follow, but when you understand that it's basically all just comedy, just bullshitting for comedy, it's not like it's not like you need a PhD to understand it. You can kind of just go through it and go, yeah, this is Rucker being crazy. His stories draw upon math lingo. His stories draw upon science fiction lingo. His stories draw upon some of the 1930s tropes of science fiction. This story draws upon surfer culture, it draws upon Alice in Wonderland, and it does so with the humor of Baron Munchausen. It's this story, and Rucker's fiction as a whole is so unconventional compared to other science fiction works that is probably the reason why you haven't seen Hugo and Nebula Awards being showered upon him, because it's so way out there. Most of the readers probably don't quite get it. But I think, give it a little chance and you'll get it, and you'll love this stuff. It really is great. Rucker is never conventional, and he's never very serious. And this story is all of that done perfectly, brilliantly. This is a wonderful story. This is a top tale. This is as good as it gets. So, highly recommended, especially if you're someone, it's not quite cyberpunk, it's not Neuromancer here, but Rucker was part of the cyberpunk movement. He was friends and collaborator with authors like Bruce Sterling and John Shirley. He was part of that group. Though I don't feel his stories really, like I say, if you love Neuromancer, I don't think it's automatic that you're going to love Rudy Rucker, because he's, even in that crowd, he's very unconventional. He's like nothing else in science fiction. And that's why I love his work. He's closer to Doctor Who than cyberpunk. He's closer to Monty Python than he is to Isaac Asimov. But he's all those things. His stories are great. And this story is a shining example of what he can do. So, have you ever read Probability Pipeline? If so, leave your comments. I'd like to hear them. I love to read them. I always try to respond, though I don't always know what to say. So sometimes my responses are brief or kind of lame, but I try to respond. I am going to go back to Rucker's very first book, which I do have, which is a nonfiction book. But I'm also going to continue the Delbert and Zeb series, and the next one of those is Chaos Safari. That's Rucker's 44th published work. Originally published in Interzone, but I don't have a copy of that Interzone. I do have it in his next collection, which was titled Gnarl. See how Rucker plays with inventing his words, transreal, gnarl, stuff like that. You know, it's cool that how he does that. It's really brilliant, and I love it. So I will be moving on to that story next. Before I go back, I do want to continue with the Delbert and Zeb series first, and then I'll go back and start reading with number 1. So look for Chaos Safari, look for all the other Rudy Rucker videos and all the other videos that we do here on Telltale Books. And until then, hit the like button and the subscribe button so that you will see these videos as they pop up. And I hope you'll see me in the next video.